Krishna, welcome. Good to see you all. Tonight, we'll continue our study of the Bhakti Shastri course, and tonight we're continuing with the Nectar of Devotion. And tonight, we are going through chapter 6 of the Nectar of Devotion. And chapter 6 is called How to Discharge Devotional Service. So I've been looking forward personally to going through this chapter because this particular chapter, Rupa Goswami teaches us about the 64 angas of bhakti, or the 64 types of devotional service, the varieties of devotional service. So the chapter is very important. I mean, the whole book is very important. And then chapter 2, around about 14, will be an elaboration of the 64 angas of bhakti, in which he will unpack the different items and elaborate on the different items of bhakti. So it's very relishable. I find it very relishable to study these 64 items, to become familiar with them, to understand what they are. One point to mention in the beginning is that the 64 items, the majority of them are in relation to deity worship, because there are so many ways to worship the deity. And because the deity is a person, the fundamental teaching of deity worship is that the deity is non-different from Krishna. He is Krishna himself. So we need to work out how to serve the deity appropriately. So there are 64 items of bhakti, and many of them pertain to deity worship directly. That's why there's so many. So we'll go through them. And then in next week onwards, we'll begin to unpack them, as Rupa Goswami unpacks them from chapter 7 onwards. So it's very interesting. Now, the chapter is called How to Discharge Devotional Service. So we need to know, because it's already been established earlier in the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu that devotional service must be anukul. Anukul means favorable. You must have a favorable mood while performing devotional service. If you're not favorable, if you're resentful while doing your devotional service, then that's not favorable. And then you don't advance properly in devotional service. Yeah, why do I have to do this service? Why am I always asked to do this? If you have that kind of mentality, you don't advance properly in bhakti, in devotional service. So we need to understand how to render devotional service and what is the proper mood. So you might have the right mood, but once you have the right mood, if you're anukul or favorable, then you have to understand how to please Krishna. Because if you don't understand how to please Krishna, it doesn't please someone. You know, you can love someone and you can be affectionate towards them and you can be favorably inclined while serving them. But if you don't know how to please them, it doesn't give them pleasure. It doesn't give the person so much pleasure. They appreciate. You know, we have the famous example that Vidura offered banana peel to Krishna. So, you know, it's favorable, but not so pleasing, not the best. It would have been better to offer the banana. Yeah, that's more pleasing to Krishna. You know, he ate the banana peel out of reciprocation, but it's not the best. So we want to be favorable, but we also want to offer Krishna the best thing. And we want to serve him as he wants. So this list is a list of how Krishna wants to be served. So that's why it's important for us to study this list, to become familiar with it, and to follow it. in order to please Krishna. So, when we're studying this list, now there are 64 ways to serve Krishna. If we go back to the Bhagavad Gita, verse 66 of chapter 18, Krishna gives the challenge shloki, like the pinnacle verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Savadamam parijaja mam ekam sharanam braja. Mam ekam. Ekam means one. Sharana braja. So Arjuna says to Krishna, Krishna, just give me one thing to concentrate on. Because sometimes in Kali Yuga, that's enough for people. Yes, people sometimes even struggle remembering one thing. You give someone one instruction and they go, oh, what was that? So difficult for people to understand. So Krishna says to Arjuna, just surrender. Now, the verse before that was the Rahasya of the Gita. Mamana baba ma bhakto ma jaji mam namaskuru. Think of me, become my devotee. Yeah. Offer your homage unto me and worship me. So these four things are given. So the one surrender to Krishna is extracted from those four. Think of Krishna, offer your homage unto him, worship him, surrender unto him. So we have these four items. But then those four are extracted from the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, where Prahlad Maharaj says, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Panasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasham Sakyam Atman Nivedanam, where he says there are 9 ways to serve Krishna. So from those 9, we extract the 4, which and then from the 4 we extract the 1, to surrender. So those 9 come from these 64, which are mentioned here, now which we're about to go through. There are 64 ways to serve Krishna. So from those 64, we take the 9, extract it into the 4, which then extract it into the 1, to surrender to Krishna. So now this chapter is like the elaboration of that one instruction that Krishna gives us in Bhagavad Gita, surrender unto him. So you come to devotional service, you feel inspired to surrender to Krishna. Now, how do I surrender to Krishna? I don't know. Just like years ago, I was staying in Tasmania with my uncle. He's passed away now. He was a very God-conscious man, but he wasn't Krishna-conscious, but he was God-conscious. One of the most God-conscious people I've met, but he didn't fully understand Krishna properly yet. But I was explaining to him one time, deity worship, because he said to me, I want to serve God, but I don't know how. So I said to him, that's why we have deity worship. Because you want to serve God. Now there's a way to serve God in his personal form. And he said to me, he said, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's logical. So that's why we have deity worship. So these 64 items of bhakti, we want to surrender to Krishna. Now, how do we surrender to Krishna? These are the 64 ways that have been compiled by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu, which is now the Nectar of Devotion. They're coming from the Hari Bhakti Vilas, from Sanatana Goswami, his elder brother. So he's extracted these 64 from the Hari Bhakti Vilas and given them to us so that we can understand very carefully what we need to follow. Now, interesting, because one time Prabhupada said, because sometimes we think, oh, there's so many rules in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada said, if I told you all the rules, you would faint. We're just getting 64. This is like a condensed version of the instructions that we could be given. Hari Bhakti Vilas has many more instructions. This is actually condensed. This is a more condensed version of what we need to do. And then Prabhupada said, there are rules. They are small rules. And if you do not follow them, Where is the proof that you love Krishna? Just like I was telling you the other day, one of the rules. So why do we follow the rules? Where's the proof we love Krishna if we don't follow them? Someone gives you a rule. Oh, I don't want to follow it. Where's the love? It's not for your pleasure, it's for Krishna's pleasure. We have to understand these things. So that's why these 64 are itemized. Sorry. That's why these 64 are given to us, so that we understand how to please Krishna. So this is actually a condensed list. It's not an elaborate list, even though for us, in Kali Yuga, we think, wow, 64, so many things I have to remember, so many things I have to do. No, Prabhupada said, these are small rules. There's not the big list that we're getting. So we have to be enthusiastic to follow it. Now, all of the rules and regulations are governed by one instruction. What is that instruction we're given? Everything we do is governed by one verse. What is that one instruction? Yeah, ultimately, but yeah, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. These two instructions. One is positive, one is negative. Always remember, that is called vidhi. In other words, things you should do or must do. If you do these things, it will help you to remember Krishna. Right? So when we go through this list of 64, there are things which are mentioned that we should do. Why? Because they help us to remember Krishna. They're called vidhi. Vidhi means rules or instructions. Then there is nisheta. Nisheta means always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So there are things which are mentioned which are called visheda, nisheda. Nisheda means things that you must avoid. So we're given positive things you must do and negative things, these things you do not do. Because if you do the positive things, they help you remember Krishna. And if you do the negative things, they make you forget Krishna. That's why we do it. That's like no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating. Why? Because they make you forget Krishna. And then how do you remember Krishna? Oh, chant 16 rounds a day. So one thing is vidhi at the time of initiation. Positive, do that, you'll remember Krishna. 4 things in nisheda, don't do them because that'll make you forget Krishna. Simple. So in this list we're about to read, it is like that. It's mainly positives, but there are a number of negatives as well. And actually chapter 8 is all negatives. There's 64 negatives, which is also a very, it's a very relishable chapter. I've taught this chapter a number of times. If out of the whole book that I've taught chapter 8 more than any other chapter. Yeah, because devotees have to know. You know, these are things you should not do. What's chapter 8 called? Offenses to be avoided. And how are you going to advance if you're committing offenses? If you don't know what you should not be doing, how are you going to advance? Many times I've given class just on that chapter. You know, this is what you have to look out for. We should know these things if you want to advance in Krishna consciousness. So always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. This chapter is all about that. It's an unpacking of those 2 instructions that were given in the beginning. So chapter 6 is simply Srila Rupa Goswami, his list of 64 prominent devotional practices compiled from Hari Bhakti Vilas. Chapter 2 defined sadhana bhakti as engaging our senses in some service to Krishna. Right? So now, how do you engage your service? How do you engage your senses? You need to engage your senses in Krishna's service. Otherwise, your senses will go off and engage in the service of Maya. We've seen that many times. Even in our own life, if we're not serving Krishna, what do? We serve Maya. So you have to take your pick, Krishna or Maya. Krishna Surya Samamaya Haya Andika. Yahan Krishna Tahan Maya. Mayara Atika. It says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna is like the sun, Maya is like darkness. Wherever the sun is, wherever light is, there cannot be darkness. So as soon as you forget Krishna, Maya comes in. That's all Maya is. Maya is forgetfulness of Krishna, that which is not. So this chapter, the first 20 items called the Bhakti Dwara. Dwara means gateway, the gateway to Bhakti, entrance to Bhakti, Bhakti Dwara. They're the first 20 items which are mentioned. That's how you enter a devotional service. Now, these will be broken down in the following chapters, and we'll study that over the next few weeks. The first 10 are positives, viti, things you must do if you want to advance in devotional service. And the second, 11 to 20, the second 10, they are the nisheda, things you must avoid. That's how we begin. It's called the Bhakti Dwara, the gateway to Bhakti. And then there are 44 more items of sadhana. And then the last 5, which is 60 to 64, which are the last 5, they are a repeat of the 5 most important items of the previous list of 60, 59 items. Right? Then Rupa Goswami says, okay, these last 5 are the most important. This was actually taught to him by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Mahaprabhu said these 5 are the most important. Why? Because they can give bhava even to a neophyte. Someone who's not very advanced, if they practice these 5 seriously, they can feel emotions towards Krishna. Even in a neophyte, that's how powerful these 5 are. So that's the basic understanding of the context of the chapter. So now we're going to read through the 64. We're not going to elaborate on them because that's what the next few chapters will do. But we will get an understanding of where they go, just so that we can understand for our benefit. And in chapter 7, we'll begin the elaboration on each of the items. So the first 10 are the most important. And what is number 1? Yeah, that's later.
Guru.
Yeah, it's called Guru Pad Ashraya, which means Guru Pad. Pad means the feet of the Guru. Ashraya, taking shelter of the feet of a bona fide spiritual master. Spiritual life begins. It's interesting. Rupa Goswami puts this as number 1 because that's where everything begins in devotional service. When you take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Why? Because you don't know how to serve Krishna. We don't know. How do we know what Krishna wants? You know, I joined the Hare Krishna movement when I was 19. I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. And I turned up at the temple literally on, my first visit to the temple was on Wednesday, I think. And I joined the temple the following Thursday. And I'd never met the devotees before. And I walked in, said I want to join, convinced them, joined. I had no idea. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know what deities were. You know, oh, this is God. Oh, okay. We serve him? Okay. I walked in on Wednesday and then I spoke to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 2 hours. Yeah, first devotee I really spoke to. Spoke to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 2 hours. Said to him, I want to join. And he saw, okay, this guy's serious because he keeps saying it after 2 hours. So, okay, come back on Sunday, meet the temple president, whose name was Balaram Prabhu. So then I spoke to him for 2 hours on Sunday. And after 2 hours, I convinced him to let me move into the ashram. And then he said to me, he said, are you chanting? And I said, chanting what? I didn't even know. That's how little I knew. I said, chanting what? He said, so he went and got me beads, gave me beads, said, this is how you do it. You chant 108 mantras, then back. And next day I chanted 16 rounds because he said, that's what you do. I was like, okay, that's what you do. So I did it. No idea what I was doing. So Guru Pada Shreya means if you don't have gurus, how do you understand how to please Krishna, serve Krishna? We have no idea. Now, as you advance, it's not that just that the guru or the gurus, they teach you the items of bhakti, but even more importantly, they teach you the mood of devotional service. What is the mood in serving Krishna? As you can learn, a devotee can say to you, make a garland. Okay, that's nice. You make the garland. What's the mood in making the garland? Are you meditating on Krishna's associates while they make a garland? Are you meditating that I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna's associates who make garlands for Krishna? So the mood has to be taught, right? And when you learn the mood in devotional service, then you understand devotional service much more deeply. So therefore, the first item of bhakti is Guru Pad Ashraya. And you must take shelter of gurus, the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Second is becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. So that's Diksha. Right? You take Diksha. Why do we take Diksha? Diksha means initiation. Why do we take Diksha? Why is that important? Because it shows the level of internal commitment that we have towards Krishna, towards devotional service. Just like in this world, in the Hare Krishna movement, if you want to associate with a member of the opposite sex, you have to get married. Right? You can't just go and have a girlfriend. I mean, people do, but, serious devotees, serious practitioners. No, you want to associate, marry the person. That is the system. That's a cultured system, right? Uncultured is, okay, just have boyfriend, girlfriend like that. Not committed. That's not God conscious. It's not Krishna conscious. It's not, it's not Brahminical. It's not cultured. Not a Brahmin, but even like Chacharis and Vaishyas, even they do it. Like, it's a Vedic cultural standard. If you want to associate with something, you have to marry the person and just, hang out. But boys and girls don't just hang out. Not in a cultured civilization. So why do we get married? Because internally there's a commitment there. But the marriage, what we call the jagya, the vivaha jagya of marriage, that is the external display of the internal commitment. So similarly, what is Diksha? Diksha is the external display of the internal commitment you have towards the guru. That's why we take initiation. Because you're showing yourself and the world, I'm committed to this person. So then we take initiation. And then you receive instruction. Shishasteham Satimam Tvam Prapanam. Krishna says, Arjuna says to Krishna, now I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Shisha means disciple. Right? Arjuna says to Krishna, now I'm your disciple. Before that, Krishna doesn't speak. He doesn't really instruct Arjuna. But then when Arjuna changes his mood, Krishna says, okay, now let's speak. While speaking learned words, you are mourning for that which is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Krishna speaks. Because why? Because Arjuna surrendered. He says, you're my guru. Krishna says, okay, now let's start. So that's why we take initiation. We have to take initiation. Actually, Prabhupada says, in the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says you don't have to take initiation. But he said, to go back to Godhead, you must chant the holy name purely. And then he says, so that's why you need to take initiation, because you're not chanting the holy name purely. Like it could be possible, but how many devotees are going to meet who are like that? Very few. So we need to get initiated, trained, and purified so that we can chant the holy name effectively. Otherwise, I know for myself, I can only speak for myself. By taking shelter of a guru, then I can advance in the process of sadhana bhakti. Because my guru has taught me his mood, he's given me instructions, he inspires me by his example, and now I can make advancement in Krishna consciousness. Yes. Question?
What about the role of connection to the parampara? Isn't that only formulated through Diksha initiation?
Yeah, that's coming up as well. It's one of the next few items. But yeah, Guru also connects you to parampara. It's an important point. Okay, so these are the first two. Number 3. Obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. You can't have a guru or gurus if you don't follow what they teach you. If you're argumentative or if you do not follow what you're being instructed, then how do you advance? You advance when you follow, right? So it says here, number 3, obey the orders of the gurus with faith and devotion. That's how you advance in Krishna consciousness. If you don't have faith and devotion, and if you're not obedient, you don't advance in Krishna consciousness. So the first 3 are all connected to this principle of Guru Tattva, or surrendering unto the spiritual master. Number 4, following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers under the direction of the spiritual master. So that's number 4, as you were just pointing out, Atuya. Number 4 is that will be following the footsteps of the previous acharyas. So in other words, we study their lives, we study their teachings, and we follow their example. I was actually listening to a lecture today while I was driving that Bhakti is beyond time and space, actually. There's no restriction to associating with the predecessors of the past, right? They're as accessible now as they always were, right? We're reading this book, we're associating with Rupa Goswami. It's not different, right? It's not that, because his samadhi is in Vrindavan, and that's the only place we can access him, or, he lived 450 years ago, therefore we cannot no, it's not true. They are as accessible now as time and space do not affect devotional relationships. So that the relationship we can have following the footsteps of those spiritual teachers, it's just as alive and powerful now as it ever was. And we all know that because we're all Prabhupada, we're all connected to Prabhupada. Right? I never met Prabhupada. When Prabhupada was in Australia the last time, I would have been 7 years old. So I didn't meet him, didn't even know who he was. But that doesn't restrict the relationship I can have with him now. Number 5, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So you only advance, Krishna says, tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. You only advance when you ask questions, when you have inquiries. One time, Prabhupada, at the end of the class, you would hear Prabhupada at the end of classes, he would say, any questions? One time, Prabhupada asked, any questions? Right? And no one said anything. And Prabhupada said, that means you're not reading my books. Because if you were reading my books, you would have questions. It means you're not reading. So you only advance when you inquire. So that's one of the items of bhakti. You have to make inquiries. Oh, how do I advance? How do I understand this? How do I go further? That's how you advance in Krishna consciousness. Number 6, being prepared to give up anything material for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This means that when we're engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, we must be prepared to give up something which we don't like to give up, and we have to accept something we don't like to accept. So in the next chapter, Prabhupada will unpack that. He'll give examples. Many things we don't like to accept. But where's the proof that you love Krishna if you don't accept them? There's many things that we don't want to give up. But where's the proof that you love Krishna if you're not willing to give them up? So that's devotional service. Many things we don't want to accept, we have to. Many things you don't want to give up, but you have to. That's one of the items of bhakti. Prabhupada will give more examples of this in the next chapter. Number 7, residing in a place of pilgrimage like Dwarka or Vrindavan. So residing in holy places like Dwarka, Vrindavan, Mayapur, Jagannath Puri, Hare Krishna Valley. Yeah. These are holy places. Prabhupada said these are replicas. It's called New Nandagram. It's not different from Nandagram. Over the years when I've chanted here and I've meditated like that, I've got realizations. This place is non-different. Of course, when you go to those original places, it's like 10,000 times more powerful. But these places are holy places. They're spiritual places. They have potency. Because we live here all the time, sometimes we don't recognize it. You become familiar. But people come here and they say there's a vibration. People pick it up. I mean, we pick it up as well, but when people come, they say it. Except number 8, accepting only what is necessary or dealing with the material world only as far as necessary. That's an item of bhakti. You only accept what is necessary. It's called yukta vairagya. Right? If something's necessary, we use it in Krishna's service. If we can't use it in Krishna's service, we reject it. That's bhakti. So we have to learn this principle. Right? We accept those things favorable, reject those things that are unfavorable. This will be unpacked. Number 9, observing the fasting day of Ekadashi. Ekadashi. When is Ekadashi? Saturday. Yeah, this Saturday, when we have a retreat. It's Ekadashi. Never easy. Just means now I've got to think more. Oh, it's Ekadashi. But it's a principle. It's a principle. And I've noticed, I've mentioned this before, I've noticed over the years, devotees who don't observe Ekadashi strictly, they struggle in other areas of their devotional service. Those devotees who follow it strictly, they can advance much easier in devotional service. Ekadashi is very important. And we'll explain it in the next chapter. We get to it. It's very, Ekadashi's, right? I've seen devotees not take it seriously. It's not good. Who told us to follow Ekadashi? Who told us? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? So if you have a problem, you take it up with him. He was very strict on Ekadashi. He said, he said to Mother Sachi, his mother, he said, please follow Ekadashi strictly. Why would he say it? Even to his mother, who's a liberated soul. Right? We have to follow Ekadashi. It's important. That don't minimize it. Sometimes I've seen devotees minimize it. It's not something that should be minimized. Prabhupada did not minimize it. My Guru Maharaj did not minimize it. I've seen, advanced devotees don't minimize it. Number 10, worshipping sacred trees like the banyan tree. This will be mentioned in the next chapter. It's the banyan tree, the other trees as well. And it's not just the banyan tree, but banyan, ashwata tree. You go to India, you see amazing banyan trees. Amazing banyan trees. And they're very powerful. You have to worship them. But in the next chapter you'll see next week, very interesting. Who else is in that list? I won't tell you now, but you'll be very happy when you hear. Some of your friends are in that list. I'm not telling you that they're in the list. And so it's very important. The suspense is killing us. Who's in the list? These 10 items are preliminary necessities for beginning the discharge of devotional service and regulative principles. In the beginning, if a neophyte devotee observes the above-mentioned 10 principles, surely he will quickly make good advancement in Krishna consciousness. I remember when I joined, I had only been a devotee, first 6 months I joined, and I was new. Like I said, I walked in, I didn't know anything. I was just, every day I was just learning so much because it was like, oh, I really didn't know anything. And then, I was told you have to follow Ekadashi. Okay, no problem. So follow Ekadashi. And then, first 6 months I'd been a devotee, it was a Sunday feast, and it was Ekadashi. And then, back in those days, this is like, 35 years ago, it's not like the temple now in Melbourne. There's so many people. So there was always prasadam hanging around. So quite often we would go sometimes between 8 and 9 at night just before we go to bed, and we'd go to the cool room, see what's there. Like, when you're at home, when you're a kid, you go to the cupboard. What's there? I need a snack. So I go to the not Greg's in the old cool room. That old one. Yeah. So we go to the cool room, dig around, just a snack before we go to sleep. So there was sweet rice. I couldn't believe it when I became a devotee. Like, you go to the cool room, the sweet rice, delicious. Then go to bed. So it was a Ekadashi. I didn't know. I knew, but I wasn't conscious or aware enough. So I went there and I had some sweet rice. And then I'm walking out, and then Shanti Parayana Prabhu, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, well, what? I didn't know. Did I do something? He said, it's a Ekadashi. You just ate. Oh no, I broke a Ekadashi. But then he said, when you're a new devotee, you take everything so seriously and so sincerely. He said, that is the equivalent of killing 10,000 brahmanas. And I was like, oh my. I was just like, I was shocked. I was mortified. So I took it like that. Oh, God, what do I do? He said, now you have to fast tomorrow. Okay. It's like, I thought, what have I done? So that's why these 10 are very important, these first 10. We should follow them very strictly. Now, the next 10. Number 11, one should rigidly give up the company of non-devotees. These are the nisheda. These are the 10 things that you must not do. Don't hang out with non-devotees. Why? We've already heard in Nectar of Instruction, and we'll hear more in the next few chapters why we should not. Number 12, one should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service. We've all made that mistake. It was a new devotee. I was preaching to family members. But they're not interested. I don't do it so much anymore because I understand better now. But, don't instruct people who are not desirous of accepting bhakti. Number 13, one should not be very enthusiastic about constructing costly temples or monasteries. Interesting instruction. We'll discuss that when it comes up, because you see Prabhupada built huge temples everywhere. but it says here, don't become overly attached to that. Number 14, one should not try to read too many books, nor should one develop the idea of earning a livelihood by lecturing or professionally reciting the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita. Don't read too many books. This is also, this will be explained as well, what this means. 15, one should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. It's an item of bhakti, very interesting. It's in here though. Don't be neglectful. Right? We're not above the law. Right? When we drive our trailers, they have to have lights. Right? One example. Many examples. We neglect things in ordinary dealings. We're not above the law. Rupa Goswami said it's an item of bhakti. Don't neglect ordinary things, outside things. We have responsibilities in this world also. Sometimes as Hare Krishnas, we think we're beyond the law. We're not. Prabhupada wanted us to be law-abiding citizens. Follow the law, right? And Prabhupada did it. Prabhupada followed the law most of the time. There are examples where Prabhupada also bent, but that's, he was teaching us certain things through that. But in general, don't neglect worldly things. It's an item of bhakti. 16, one should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss or jubilation in gain. What's that point? That verse? Na sochiti, na kankshati. Krishna says in Gita, Brahma Buddha Prasanatma. Don't lament, don't hanker. Right? It doesn't help you in your devotional service.
Be equipoised.
Yeah, Mani said the same thing. Yep, be equipoised. Number 17, one should not disrespect the demigods. It's a very nice instruction. Don't disrespect them. I went yesterday to my good friend Yogeshwara Prabhu's place for lunch, and he has a deity of Lord Shiva. And after he offered the Bhoga to Bhonitai, Jagannath, Balaram, Subhadra, and Radha Krishna, then he offers the prasad to Lord Shiva, which is actually the system. Don't neglect the demigods. It's an important instruction because they're more advanced than us. Sometimes, I've heard devotees say, Indra did this and Brahma. Who are you? You've done worse than Indra and Brahma, so don't get too carried away. Number 18, one should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity. Unnecessary trouble. One time Prabhupada was walking in the zoo and devotees were teasing the lion. Prabhupada said, do not tease him. Prabhupada said, don't disturb him. He's not doing anything. You wouldn't be teasing him if the cage wasn't there. It's only because the cage is there. Don't disturb living entities unnecessarily. It's called jiva aparad. It's an offense in bhakti, actually, to disturb other living entities unnecessarily. Number 9, one should carefully avoid the various offenses in chanting the holy name of the Lord or in worshipping the deity in the temple. That opens up chapter 8. And chapter 8 just goes from that one instruction, you get a whole chapter. 64 things that you have to be careful of. Number 10, one should be very intolerant toward the blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna or his devotees. We're not tolerant. We don't like hearing Krishna or his devotees blasphemed by devotees and non-devotees. We don't like non-devotees do it. We don't like devotees doing it either. When they blaspheme Krishna, or when you hear one devotee criticizing another devotee unnecessarily, that doesn't lead to growth in bhakti. Without following these above-mentioned 10 principles, one cannot properly elevate himself to the platform of sadhana bhakti. Altogether, Rupa Goswami mentions 20 items, and all of them are very important. Out of the 20, the first 3, namely, taking shelter of the Guru, initiation from him, and serving him with respect and reverence, these are the most important. And that's where ISKCON began. ISKCON began with everyone took shelter of Prabhupada. That's how it began. And that's how bhakti begins. Take shelter of the Guru, get initiated, follow his instruction. That's how you advance. The next most important items are, now there's 44 more, which are there. Decorate the body with tilak. It's important. Decorate the body with tilak. This will be mentioned in the next couple of chapters, so we'll go into that in more detail. Prabhupada says here, the idea is that as soon as a person sees the mark on the body of the Vaishnava, of tilak, he will immediately remember Krishna. Lord Chaitanya said that a Vaishnava is he who, when seen, reminds one of Krishna. Therefore, it is essential that a Vaishnava mark his body with tilak to remind others of Krishna. Next one. In marking such tilak, one may sometimes write Hare Krishna on his body. You see this in Vrindavan. Sometimes you see devotees there in Sanskrit, they write Hare Krishna in Sanskrit, or they get a stamp. They just go boom, boom, like that. So it's something you can also do. I've even seen devotees do it on their forehead, on their cheeks. And if you go to Varshana, little girls come up to you and they put Radhe, like Radha, stamp you, and then they say, give me some rupees. Like that. So it's nice. You can stamp like that. One should accept flowers and garlands that have been offered to the deity and the spiritual master and put them on one's body. That's an item of bhakti. And we'll discuss this when we get to it. To wear the garlands. Sometimes you see all the time, actually. You give a devotee a garland, then they wear it for a couple of seconds, they take it off. I think because they think, oh, I'm not qualified or something. You're meant to wear it. You're meant to wear it. It's Krishna's garland or the Guru's garland. It's per se, it purifies you. That's why you're supposed to keep it on. Whenever I give garlands to my family members or non-devotees, I say, take this home and then hang it somewhere in your house. Let it dry. It will purify the atmosphere. So we don't just discard them. They're very important. One should learn to dance before the deity. That's an item of bhakti, dancing in front of Krishna. Prabhupada said you can go back to Godhead just by dancing in front of Gaurnita. One should learn how to bow down immediately upon seeing the deity or the spiritual master. We'll discuss this when we get to it. It's important. You have to bow down. Right? When you see the Guru, you have to bow down. When he sees you, you have to bow down. Sometimes it's not the same moment. Right? You walk up, oh, there's my Guru. Bow down. But then when he turns around and he sees you, you have to do it again. Or if it's, at the same moment, then once, but, it's important. And the deities, we'll discuss it when we get to it. Sometimes I see devotees in the temple, they just stick their head in like this, see the deities are Hari Bol. and having a look around for someone. I say to devotees, go in and offer. You have to offer your obeisances now. You can't just say, oh, Haribol Krishna. It's Krishna. You know? My Guru Maharaj said to me one time, he said, don't be lazy. Because I offered my obeisances to him and Guru Raj Maharaj at the same time. I went down, I said both mantras. And then he said, don't be lazy. He said, offer to him and then to him. Offer to me and then to him. And that's the system. So we have to do these things. As soon as one visits the temple of Krishna, one must stand up. You see in the arti, when you go to the temple, everyone stands up. Then we say, even here on Sunday, we say, please stand up. Right? And then we say to people, because, it's their first time, we say, if you feel more comfortable, sit down. But the etiquette is while the arti is on, you stand up. That's the etiquette. It's like even in worldly dealings, if someone comes in, you stand up to greet them. It's culture, it's etiquette. When the deity is being born for a stroll in the street, a devotee should immediately follow the procession. Carried. So Ratha Yatra or any other festival. You got to join in. You can't just say, Haribol, good to see you. No, you have to follow. If the Lord's on procession, you have to join in. Prabhupada gives a big explanation. We won't read it all. A devotee must visit a Vishnu temple at least once or twice a day, morning and evening. Right? So Prabhupada explains again here. Everyone if you go, that's the nice thing about Vrindavan and these holy places, everyone goes in the morning to the temple and then again in the evening. That's just the system. Everyone does it. One must circumambulate the temple building at least 3 times. We used to do that in Kartik. We used to do Damodar Ashtika and then we used to go around 3 times. Kirtan around. We don't do it last few years, but we used to do it. Go around the temple. You see over at our place, Guru Raj's ashram, you see people going around all the time. There's always, even a couple of weekends ago, some devotees came. They were going around. I think they had a baby after, because our Guru Raj, our Sheila, 5, 6 devotees, I think, that I've heard of, were having trouble conceiving, and then they went around, and now there's a reputation. So devotees come. They say, oh, go and do it, and then you have a baby. And then one devotee came, and I think he had a baby, but I think it was the first child. I don't think it was that child, but I think previous child. So he came back, and he brought the baby to see Giri Raj, and they went around the house. So that's the system. You have to circulate. One must worship the deity in the temple according to the regulative principles, offering arti and prasad. Decorating the deity. These things must be observed regularly. So it means that you have to do deity worship. There's a system of worshiping the deity, right? So that has to be followed. That's why we have deities, because we need to follow these things. We need to worship Krishna. One must render personal service to the deities. As I said in the beginning, many of these 64 items pertain to the worship of the deity. One must sing before the deity. One must perform sankirtan before the deity. One must chant before the deity. One must offer prayers to the deity. One must recite notable prayers to the deity. One must taste Mahaprasad, which has been offered to the deity. One must drink Charanamrita, water from the bathing of the deity. One must smell the incense and the flowers offered to the deity. One must touch the lotus feet of the deity. One must see the deity with great devotion, darshan of the deity. One must offer arti to the deities. One must hear about the Lord and his pastimes from the Bhagavatam in front of the deities. One must pray to the deity for his mercy. One should remember the deity. One should meditate upon the deity. One should render service, voluntary service. It's a very nice item of bhakti. One should think of the Lord as one's friend. One should offer everything to the Lord. One should offer a favorite article, such as food or a garment, to the Lord, to the deity. One should take all kinds of risks and perform all endeavors for Krishna's benefit. In every condition, one should be a surrendered soul. One should pour water on the Tulsi tree. One should regularly hear the Bhagavatam and similar literature. One should live in a sacred place like Mathura, Vrindavan, or Dwarka. One should offer service to the Vaishnavas. One should arrange one's devotional service according to one's means. In the month of Kartik, which is in October, November, one should make arrangements for special services. During Janmashtami, the time of Krishna's appearance in this world, one should observe a special service. One should do whatever is done with great care and devotion for the deity. One should relish the pleasure of Bhagavatam reading among devotees and not among outsiders. One should associate with devotees who are considered more advanced. One should chant the holy name of the Lord, and one should live in the jurisdiction of Mathura. So as we said, those last 5 are repeated from the previous 59. And they'll be elaborated upon later on in this book, in the Nectar of Devotion. And then there's commentaries also where the acharyas explain the importance of all those items, especially the last 5, which are the most important of all the items of bhakti. Now, the total regulative principles comes to an aggregate of 64 items. As we have mentioned, the first are the primary 10 regulative principles. Then come the secondary 10 regulative principles, and added to these are 44 other activities. So altogether, there are 64 items for discharging the regulative practice of devotional service. Out of these 64, 5 items, namely worshipping the deity, hearing the Bhagavatam, associating with the devotees, Sankirtan, and living in Mathura, are very important. The 64 items of devotional service should include all of our activities of body, mind, and speech. As stated in the beginning, the regulative principles of devotional service enjoins that all of our senses must be employed in the service of the Lord. Exactly how they can be thus employed is described in the above 64 items. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami will give evidence from different scriptures supporting the authority of many of these points. So that's what next week will be, chapter 7. We'll begin to hear an unpacking. Prabhupada will comment, and we may find other comments as well from previous acharyas about each of the items as we go through. So it's very important that we learn and study these 64 so that we know how to serve Krishna So next week we'll do chapter 7. The week after we'll do chapter 8. Chapter 8 is based on the 19th instruction, which is regarding offenses. And then we go into 64 offenses in that chapter, which is also very important because you have to understand what you should not do. It's very important. Devotees sometimes they don't understand things and they commit offenses. So, it's simple. You just read the books and then we don't have to commit offenses and we don't slow down our devotional service. Does anyone have any questions about anything?
Is the test going to be just the first part? Three separate tests? Or is it just
No, there's one for the Nectar of Devotion. There's one exam for the whole 19 chapters. Yeah, so you have to memorize all those 64. That will be one of your questions in the test. Yeah, I'm joking. So, but at least become familiar with them. There's a lot of information. So read it again, read it again, read it again. Like that. But yeah, there's a lot of information.
It's just one.
Yeah, but it's only one exam. Yeah, it's one exam over the 19 chapters. Like that. But I'll do a what do you call it? A overview. Yeah, so in the overview I'll cover what's in the exam.
Yeah, sure.
And I won't tell you now what's in it, except that you will have to memorize the 64 items of bhakti, and you'll also have to memorize the 64 offenses in chapter 8. Any other points? Love Prabhupada.
Just with one of them, this feet for the deity.
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone touch the feet for the deity. It's not.
That's because the curtains are closed when they're doing it.
And what about those that aren't on the altar now?
You might want to take second initiation.
That's one thing.
Yeah, obviously. But then, yeah, if you want to touch their feet, then that's an impetus to take second initiation.
So they do touch their feet.
That's what we do. Yeah. Put our head on the feet of the leaders. So that's an impetus, that's a motivation for you. And one day you can do that. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week. Yeah, who's that? Manju, is it?
No, it's Tulia, your wife.
Oh, Atoya, my wife.
Just about
I
the
could hear her
trees.
voice, I couldn't see who it was.
It's just about the trees. Like, does it elaborate further on about the trees?
About the banyan tree?
No, just the trees in general. Because I know Mother Jagatarini she's trying to write a book, and I hope she gets it done, about the different trees of Vrindavan and just the significance of the trees.
Yeah. So what's the question?
Does it explain it further in the book? Does it elaborate more about the worshipping of
Yeah,
the
because
trees, or do you want to elaborate now?
the item we read tonight said the banyan tree.
That was
Worship
an
that when
example, wasn't it?
when we get, what's that?
That was just an example of there's other trees as well.
There are other trees, but we'll get to it when, next week we'll get to it.
Oh, okay. It's further elaborated on it in the next chapter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't. Tonight was an overview, but now in the next chapter, Rupa Goswami breaks down each item. So then we'll go into detail on each one.
Yeah, it said at the beginning that these are just the principles, not the details.
Yeah. The details will come next week.
Okay.
The next 4 to 7 weeks will be the details. Any other question? Okay. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol. We'll see you Saturday.
See you Saturday. Yeah.
Thank you. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Bol.
It was.
Mm.